the idea is regarding the Torah or the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible specifically. Traditionally, people have attributed those books as far as authorship to Moses, right?
Yeah.
And over time, scholars looking at the text started to notice specific things that sort of challenged that idea. Could you maybe give us a little overview of what that looked like? Yeah.
I do this often enough. I keep on trying to like reduce my reduce this down to like how few minutes can I give the whole thing?
Right, and I apologize for asking you to cover familiar ground here.
No, it's great. I don't mind the practice at all. I'm gonna get it down to like a 30-second, like really quick. I'm never gonna do that.
Sure.
So the step one is how did we lose the idea of Moses as author? The claim that Moses was the author of the Torah, the Pentateuch, is actually not even one that's it's certainly not in the Torah or Pentateuch itself. Which Moses doesn't show up for the first book, and he dies at the end and all sorts of things, right? He's a character, not the author. But the idea that Moses was the author comes from, in large part, from having the tradition of calling that book the Torah of Moses. Right. When you say something is the something of someone, we tend to do say authorship, right? In the same way that we say,
right.
Oh, it's a psalm of David. David must have written it, which is equally untrue. Though we know things like when we say like the book of Ruth, Ruth didn't write it.
Right.
So the Torah of Moses is more a construction like book of Ruth, where it's like it's the Torah given to us by Moses or about Moses, or in any case, the claim then that Moses was in fact the author of the Torah really sort of takes hold probably somewhere before the turn of the era in the last couple of centuries, BCE, and then becomes standard, right? So standard Jewish texts say Moses wrote the Torah. Though they say, but maybe not the last few verses where he dies and gets buried.
Right,
so they're clear that there's like some stuff that probably would have been a tough sled. But there are other rabbinic authorities who say, no, he did write those. They were just dictated to him by God, and he wept while he was writing them, and then he died. So like they're still trying to, and that's basically the way it's stuck. For about 1,000 years, in the medieval period, a rabbi, a Jewish scholar named Ibn Ezra, fantastic commentator and scholar, was like, essentially, almost under his breath, was like, I think maybe there's some verses that doesn't look like Moses wrote them. And he's like, look, or he didn't even say that. He said there's a few verses that are interesting, right? And he points to ones like at the very beginning of the book of Deuteronomy. It says, these are the words that Moses spoke to the Israelites on the other side of the Jordan. Well, if Moses spoke them on the other side of the Jordan, then whoever's writing this isn't on the same side as Moses.
Right.
So Moses
it's putting the perspective on the
right. Mm-hmm. Couldn't have written that. And there's a few other ones like that, things that verses that refer to stuff that's well after Moses' time. Or Moses' own death scene, various things here and there.
I've heard people mention the verse where it describes Moses as a very humble man.
Yeah, now Moses was the most humble man on earth. Yeah, in Numbers 12. That's my favorite. So, the idea that Moses might not have written it all sort of starts to take root there, and then expands. And then eventually, even by the 17th century, scholars and philosophers are like, nah, like, Major Spinoza and Hobbes, these were like, no, like, it wasn't Moses, but they still hadn't quite gotten around to the idea that it wasn't some one person. And that's like, so step one was not Moses.
Then the natural question is, then who?
Right. And so, lots of possibilities at that point. I mean, for Spinoza, the philosopher Benedict Spinoza, he was like, oh, it was Ezra, right? So he just like gave it to a later biblical character, right? Because he was worried about the chronology and stuff in there. But as people start giving up on Moses' author in the, early days of the Enlightenment, as people started saying like, well, maybe this claim that Moses wrote the whole thing, maybe we shouldn't start from that idea, right? Because there's some weird stuff going on in here that doesn't look like a normal writing,
right?
Like as we understand it.